this new piece of evidence that's come forth for the handbag that may completely change our understanding of what the handbag means.
This is kind of blowing my mind because it's like a map within a map.
Exactly. So the flower of life is a type of symbol that has been used by ancient cultures throughout history. It's one of the most common motif symbols we find. I think that one of the best examples for it we can see in ancient times is if we go to the Osirion in Abydos, Egypt. And in the Osirion is this massive subterranean area that is built out of these huge granite columns that are many, many multi-ton granite columns is a very mysterious place because there's primitive limestone built above it, just like we talked about with different cultures building on top of older existing things. And down in the Osirion, you can see these numerous patterns that have been carved into the rock of this six-spoked flower of life. Now, why 6? Well, the flower of life is basically the way that you would embody and show the intelligent design of life in the entire universe. And let me get into why that statement. So this gets into Nikola Tesla. So Nikola Tesla, he has this famous quote. He says, basically, if you want to uncover the mysteries of the universe, it's found within the numbers 3, 6, and 9. He realized that there was a repeating pattern of life everywhere, all on Earth. If you see the designs of like a honeycomb or the designs of the flowers and patterns everywhere, it follows and mimics this design of 3, 6, and then 9. It's basically, it's a repeating pattern of life. It's a life pattern. It's a blueprint of the creation of life in the universe.
What if nature has been trying to tell us a secret all along? One so powerful it could rewrite everything we think we know about reality. This isn't ancient aliens or sci-fi speculation. This is something far more grounded and far more mysterious. It's about patterns you can see for yourself, etched into ancient stone across continents, mirrored in the delicate structure of a flower, and coded into the spiral of a galaxy. And it all points to something remarkable. Tesla believed these patterns weren't random at all. He saw them as the blueprints of the universe, and believed that 3, 6, and 9 were not just numbers, but keys. Keys to energy, matter, vibration, and maybe even consciousness itself. Nikola Tesla didn't just invent the technologies that shaped our modern world, he saw patterns most people overlooked. To him, numbers weren't just tools for calculation. They were the very fabric of reality, and none fascinated him more than 3, 6, and 9. He believed these numbers formed the fundamental blueprint of nature. The number 3 represents the triangle, the most stable structure in geometry, found in pyramids and molecules. 6 appears in the hexagon, nature's most efficient shape, seen in honeycombs and snowflakes. And 9, Tesla called it the number of completion, a kind of energetic vortex. Multiply it, and it always returns to itself. 9 times 2 equals 18. 1 plus 8 equals 9. The cycle never breaks. These weren't just ideas in his head. Tesla tried to prove them physically, through a field called cymatics. He watched how vibration shaped matter. When sound frequencies passed through plates covered in sand or water, the particles self-organized into perfect geometric patterns, circles, triangles, and hexagons, depending on the frequency. Tesla wasn't guessing. He was seeing a universal rhythm most had missed. Once you start looking, you'll see it everywhere. Snowflakes form with 6 symmetrical arms, each branching out at perfect 60-degree angles. Honeycombs naturally build themselves into hexagons, nature's most efficient way to fill space. Why? Because vibration and the geometry it produces isn't random. It's deeply mathematical. Water molecules? They stabilize at 120 degrees. That's 1 plus 2 plus 0 equals 3. Benzene rings, 6 sides. Time, even that follows the code. 24 hours in a day. 2 plus 4 equals 6. 360 degrees in a circle. 3 plus 6 plus 0 equals 9. Everywhere you look, the universe is whispering the same sequence. 3, 6, 9.
We find that pattern was known about by the ancients. They knew about this
3, 6,
pattern
9.
of creation, yes.
How do we know that?
Because when we look at all of these symbols, you look at every single symbol that we're looking at except for one, the cross. Cross is more of a totality symbol. But you look at the step pyramid design, there's always 3 levels to it. Every time we go around the world, whether or not it's Peru, and I just got back looking at it, for instance, there's a place called the Spring of the Nusta at Ollantaytambo, has 3 levels to it. You can also go across just down the road from it to a place called Napa Iglesia. There's these doorways that are like false doorways. There's always 3 levels every time. Anytime you see these ancient motif designs, you see this type of pyramid-like 3-level pyramid design or 3-level kind of entranceway. Like, for instance, if you look at the Gate of the Sun at Tiwanaku and Pumapunku, there's a doorway there. If you look at the backside of that, there are 3 levels to that. Just like Viracocha is that's depicted on that is standing on a platform with 3 levels. Okay? So you get this repeating pattern over and over and over again. They show 3 over and over everywhere. And then you see the pattern of the flower of life, which is 6. And then you get these 3-level step pyramids, like in the Kef bas relief. 3 pyramids, 9, right? 3 plus 3 plus 3.
Yep.
Every single time you look at the motifs and designs they had, they were mimicking this pattern of creation in the universe, like they already understood it. And this gets down into this whole discussion of whether or not this lost time period of human history, these incredible cultures, the reason they were able to build the things that they were, these magnificent megalithic things that we have no idea how they moved them, how they carved them, any of these questions of how they did these things they did. It comes down to the question of, well, did they understand physics and aspects of the energetics and designs woven into our universe that Nikola Tesla stumbled upon? That's really what this conversation is about, is whether or not there was already something known that is not like he invented it. It's like he found it again.
Yes.
Through what was already, rediscovered it from what was already known. And they may help us to understand the capabilities of this lost civilization to do the things that they were doing, because they understood these fundamental key things of not only the earth, but the universe.
The flower of life, etched into the granite walls of Egypt's Osirian temple, displays a 6-fold geometric pattern that matches the formations Tesla created with electromagnetic fields. This sacred symbol is a precise mathematical diagram appearing across cultures from China to medieval Europe, always maintaining its exact proportions. Pyramids worldwide follow this numerical logic. The Great Pyramid of Giza, Teotihuacan's Pyramid of the Sun, and China's White Pyramid of Xi'an all exhibit stepped 3-level designs. Architectural elements repeat this pattern. Tripartite doorways appear in Mayan temples, Egyptian tombs, and Hindu shrines, suggesting deliberate encoding of vibrational principles rather than stylistic preference. Beyond these monumental structures, temple layouts frequently use groupings of 9. The 9 platforms of Borobudur mirror the 9 levels of Mesopotamia's ziggurat at Ur. Angkor Wat's central towers form a 3x3 grid, while the Dresden Codex divides the Mayan underworld into 9 levels. These patterns imply ancient builders shared a geometric understanding, aligning with Tesla's findings about resonance. The construction methods deepen the mystery. At Ollantaytambo, builders fitted multi-ton granite blocks with joints tighter than a razor blade. Baalbek's 800-ton basalt columns were lifted to heights challenging modern cranes. Legends describe builders softening stone with liquids or chants, hints of forgotten technologies harnessing material resonance. The consistency is undeniable. Cultures separated by oceans shouldn't independently develop identical principles unless responding to observable natural laws.
The mysterious thing is that how did they possibly invent everything that they invented? Right? When we look at the Sumerians, they invented agriculture, mathematics, animal husbandry, how to basically laws and rules, mathematics. Everything was invented that time period. But where did it come from? Where did any of this knowledge come from? How could you have a civilization just wakes up one day and understands the fundamental principles of the universe and understands universal laws?
Is there an explanation for, having their own people who were the Nikola Teslas of their time that could have figured this out, meaning it didn't come from like a celestial place? It actually did come from someone, like the apple falling on Newton and being like, holy shit.
To answer your question is, it seems as though, and all the tablets describe this. When we look at the cuneiform tablets out of Mesopotamia, they describe these teachers around the world called the Apkallu that traveled around the world to pass knowledge. We see evidence around the world in indigenous cultures and ancient cultures. They talk of, and they have these symbols everywhere, is this passing of knowledge around the world and creating civilizations, but out of something. If you had knowledge lowered somewhere, like if some place had the ultimate knowledge that was given to that place, that created some kind of a grand civilization, and then they were traveling around the world to create shoots of that civilization, and you had teachers traveling around the world doing that, that's exactly what we see with symbols everywhere on the world. Like, to give you an example, this mysterious pine cone and handbag we see that's all over Lake Vaughn and in Mesopotamia is shown also across the world in like the Olmec civilization in Mexico, right? And we see it at Göbekli Tepe on the pillars. We see it in other numerous cultures in different parts of Iraq and other places where there's this depiction of knowledge being passed around the world. Go to the Vatican. There's a giant statue outside the Vatican of a pine cone. Giant statue sitting right outside the Vatican of a pine cone. And we see the same cross from Ionis in all of the Vatican on the mitre hat and on the cloak they wear and on the staff. There's like this underbelly of ancient knowledge that seems to have passed around the ancient world, then destroyed, but then preserved and protected in small little key pockets by different secret societies and other groups to preserve it.
One of the most persistent mysteries in ancient art involves two recurring symbols, the pine cone and the handbag. These images appear across cultures with no apparent connection from Assyrian reliefs to Mayan stelae. The pine cone often appears in sacred contexts, held by deities or positioned near depictions of trees. Its anatomical resemblance to the human pineal gland suggests spiritual significance, as this gland produces melatonin and contains light-sensitive cells. Ancient Hindu texts describe a third eye in this region, linking it to higher perception. The handbag motif proves even more intriguing. Carved into Sumerian temples around 2500 BCE, it appears in the hands of winged genies guarding sacred trees. Nearly identical designs appear thousands of years later in Olmec and Aztec art. At Göbekli Tepe, 11,000-year-old columns show abstract beings with handbag-like forms. The consistency in design, rectangular with a curved handle, rules out coincidence. A Babylonian mural shows eagle-headed deities fertilizing a date palm while holding handbags, with spiraling vines forming geometric patterns. This suggests the handbags symbolize knowledge transfer rather than practical use. These symbols frequently appear together. At Nimrud, a relief shows winged figures flanking a sacred tree, one holding a bucket, the other a pine cone. The Aztec rain god Tlaloc wears a pine cone headdress while gripping a handbag-shaped vessel. In Hindu temples, deities like Kubera hold money bags resembling Mesopotamian designs.
This new piece of evidence that's come forth for the handbag that may completely change our understanding of what the handbag means, and how we finally have some definitive evidence of what it means. In the 1800s, Austin Henry Layard was traveling down on a boat in the Tigris River in Iraq. And outside of the area of Nineveh in Sippar, that area of ancient Iraq, he saw a huge mound that looked artificial to him. And he subsequently came back with an archaeological team. They got permission from the Ottoman Empire, who was in control of that area at the time, and they excavated this area, and they found it to be an extension of the Ashurbanipal Palace. Now, if you remember, we talked about Ashurbanipal with the ancient library, right, that connects all around the world, which, by the way, if nobody knows, you know the famous writer H.G. Wells? He called the Ashurbanipal Library the most important ancient library in the world. That's what his quote was for that library. So he was studying it.
You were saying that the Library of Alexandria even pales in comparison.
Yeah, because it was all paper records and it was younger. This is an ancient library of cuneiform records and murals and statues from all over the world. Ashurbanipal was an Assyrian king that was a son of Sennacherib, who basically was a priest as well. And he went around the world and collected all of these ancient relics from around the ancient world. And he believed it was very, very important. So he amassed it all together. Now, we've talked about the Ashurbanipal Library, but we haven't talked about what was in his palace. So Austin Henry Layard finds this palace in the 1800s. separate from the library. They're part of an area, but in the palace contained these 12 giant murals that are like 7 feet tall, made out of gypsum alabaster. Okay? And they have been frequently shown around the world when people are talking about the pinecone and handbasket or handbag, because they have all of these different depictions of eagle-headed winged gods and also just regular horned-headed winged gods as well. They either have an eagle head or they have like a human-like head with horns on top of it, okay? Well, 12 of those were found. 12 of them. And those 12 were brought to the British Museum in the 1800s. But the British Museum didn't have room for them to house them all. Okay? And so they sold 12 of, and there may have been more than 12 originally found. Well, they sold 12 of them off to a private collector in none other than New York City.
Can we go find him?
We can go find them.
Who is he?
That private collection was put into a part of what became the New York Library. Years later, was then moved and it was displayed in the early 2000s in the Brooklyn Museum.
So it's there. It was displayed then, and it hasn't been displayed since.
Yes. And so somebody actually tipped me off to this. I will not take full credit for this, but I appreciate the person who did, is that we have been studying all of these depictions of the handbag around the world. Every single depiction of the handbag has nothing on it except for little like creative designs like little circles and things like that. It's always blank. And this big controversy and discussion has been, well, what are the handbags? Are they a physical object? What's in them, right? Or are they something symbolic? What does it mean? And there's been so much debate and discussion for countless years about this. Now, of those 12 murals that ended up in the Brooklyn Museum, they're all identical except for one. Only one of the murals that was brought there has something carved within it in the handbag. Okay? On this handbag is its own depiction carved in it of the two eagle-headed gods,
yes,
with a tree of life in the middle with Anu in the center with wings, and then passing the pine cone to the tree of life, okay?
Yep.
Now, this gets into what I believe the handbag truly means, and I think is evidence to finally prove what it means. Remember when I was talking about how these civilizations seem to have the knowledge of all of life, the creation of life, the balance and harmony of life. And so they have, you see the pine cone, which by the way, the pine cone is like a seed of the tree of life. But it's through a sacred geometry. So sacred geometry gets into what I was just talking about with 369 with the flower of life. This pine cone aspect that we see, they're passing the pine cone all around the world, right? And they have the handbag. Now, again, this is the whole debate about what the handbag means. Well, this evidence gives us strong a hypothesis to present that it is, in fact, a symbolic depiction of having the totality of all knowledge, being like the guardians of all knowledge, but not just like regular knowledge, the knowledge of all of creation and balance in the whole entire universe. And this is where I believe it gets into the mysterious concept that these are not just cultures around the world that discovered it, that it was something that was passed to them, and that's why they're depicting this all around the world, because it's like something divine. Right? If you were to think of it as divine knowledge being then passed. And so they would show it in all of their artwork because they then had their civilizations created through like divine means, which then often became corrupted and destroyed later on. But it started in this divine place. And I think this really helps us to understand these symbols in a way that it never has before. And we can finally understand, look, that not only are these some of the most important symbols in the world that tie into a mysterious civilization that would rewrite history as we know it. I don't think it would even just rewrite history. It's not just about saying our time period is older than it is. Something that may have been lowered from a celestial higher intelligence from above. Something great. That we were the progenitors of something far greater than just hunter-gatherers. That's why humanity seems so different and is talked about in so many ways of us being from a divine place. And I think this is really, really where we can merge with some of the religious concepts, with esoteric mysticism and ancient concepts, is that all this evidence is pointing towards us coming from or being given divine knowledge that was then created and then passed around the world to create the greatest civilizations and the greatest structures that have ever existed.
The Sumerian king list describes gods ruling for thousands of years before a catastrophic flood. Geological evidence shows events like the Younger Dryas impact 12,800 years ago, precisely when many cultures place their golden age of divine rule. This suggests knowledge bearers may have emerged after planetary disasters to rebuild civilization. Their warnings echo through millennia. The Vedas describe cycles where misuse of vibrational weapons destroyed civilizations. Viracocha warned against repeating past errors. These recurring themes imply the knowledge required ethical preparedness, a concept Tesla echoed when speaking about energy technologies demanding spiritual maturity. What if these accounts preserve fragments of real events? The gods' depictions as teachers with specialized tools align curiously with modern discoveries about energy manipulation. Their symbols, rods, serpents, and spirals, might encode principles of technologies we're only now rediscovering. Could human development be less about linear progress and more about cyclical rediscovery of ancient wisdom lost to time?